Good afternoon. Today's Battle Rhythm Strengthening Marital Relationships will be hosted by Jeanette Gillis. Jeanette is the director of the network at America's Warrior Partnership. The network provides local veteran-serving organizations with a connection to national resources when a veteran's request cannot be met locally. To find out more about the network, please visit americaswarriorpartnership.org/the network. That's it for me. Jeanette, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I would like to, as Allison introduced the topic, I would like to share with you who we have with us today. But before doing that, I'd like to welcome all of you. We'd like to welcome all of our branch communities, 4-Star Alliance members, any VSOs that are here, any other guests. We're going to be talking about marriage today. And the most important relationship, the marital relationship. Dr. Tepper is going to be here. He is a sexuality educator and coach. And we also have Jen and Tom Satterly. They are the co-founder and CEO of All Secure Foundation. We're going to start with turning it over to Dr. Tepper.
Oh, that was fast. Okay. Hello, everybody. What we're going to do is show a quick 10 minutes of a documentary I produced and directed called Love After War, and then we'll talk a little bit about that right after. So here we go.
I was wounded in a firefight in Afghanistan where I was shot 4 times. One of the bullets paralyzed me from just above the belly button down.
I was an explosive ordnance disposal tech, which means I was military bomb squad. I lost both my legs above the knee. I have traumatic brain injury, as well as I lost my right testicle and 1/3 of my left testicle.
A sniper shot me in the head where the bullet penetrated my left temple and exited out my right eye, causing blindness instantaneously.
I received some injuries, mostly concussive stuff, things exploding close by. The violence that was going on, it was a constant, and it kind of came home with me after that deployment.
My NCO, he called and he said, "Hey, I need you to come over to my house." So I show up to his house and walk in, it's smoky. He was smoking weed in the house. And I was like, "What did you call me over here for? Like, why am I here? Like, I'm not doing this, And, he kept me there.
So I'm in the ambulance with another fellow Marine and one of the Navy corpsmen. And luckily the Marine, he used to be an EMT before he joined the Marine Corps. So he was telling the corpsman, we need to do this and this. So him and I were joking around, and all of a sudden I started getting this burning sensation in between my legs. And at that moment, everything came crashing down because I'm like, oh my God, did I get burned down there?
Upward to 1 million men and women who have served since 9/11 have experienced either traumatic brain injury or post-traumatic stress or depression. And furthermore, we have thousands of people, tens of thousands of people who have incurred catastrophic physical disabilities.
You go through this traumatic event, and now you have this disability. You have this issue that is, affecting you every single day and affecting such an important part and such a big part of life that unfortunately a lot of the healthcare system has failed to even address the shortcomings of sexual health and anything related to that.
We had absolutely no support for our sexual health, the intimacy of our relationship. It was not addressed in his recovery at any point. Nobody ever asked us about it.
Research shows that when people return from deployment with a serious mental or physical disability, they experience more marital stress and divorce than their non-disabled peers. Failed intimate relationships continue to be the leading contributor to suicide in service members and veterans.
I was married to Aaron 18 months when he was injured. He'd been deployed for 6 of that, so we were only married a year before he left for Afghanistan. So we spent considerable time on his needs in a really unnatural way. So most of our marriage is focused on one half of it. And the other half is trying to serve that person. And I feel like it's possibly created some feelings and some habits that will not serve us very well, you know, in the future.
The physical aspect of me recovering was easy. The therapy, not a problem. But relationships, it was tough because I was my biggest enemy. I would defeat myself before I even would initiate any type of relationship with anybody. I don't see myself being burned because it's just who I am. I'm still an outgoing person, but then I'd be like, well, she's not going to want to be with me because, you know, I'm burned, I'm scarred. I'm not what the, you know, fits the norm, what you see on TV.
After my time as an inpatient in the hospital, recovering with a spinal cord injury, you know, there was a lot of unknowns. You know, what was life going to look like? What was dating going to look like?
PTSD and TBI and depression, other psychological injuries of the war, affect intimacy and sexual health in several ways. First of all, post-traumatic stress disorder usually causes a feeling of disconnectedness, numbing, or avoidance with especially people who haven't been there. By been there, been in the theater of war with you, and that's often your spouse, your wife, husband, partner.
He was a monster when he came back, and I knew it was because of everything that he had dealt with, but he was refusing to talk about it or to even acknowledge that it had happened.
During the 3 to 5 year period when I was having a huge internal struggle with myself, with anger against myself, resentment against myself, it severely impacted the relationship between Kate and I.
Anger is a significant component in how those patients are impacted from an intimacy perspective in their relationships. Often with traumatic brain injury, we see insomnia and issues with sleep that impact our frustration tolerance and our ability to manage anger and irritability. And often that comes out in those relationships.
At 20, you're in your prime. You know, sex is a very, very important thing in life for a 20-year-old, and you essentially just have that ripped away, and this whole new life thrown in front of you that you essentially have to learn through on a crash course.
Often when we're talking about sexuality, we automatically think of the couple. But so many people, when they're injured, they are single, and they think that their disabilities are the end of their sexual life. But that isn't the case.
One of the things Tyler's always said is every single one of his past relationships post-injury has ended because of the chair. And with me, I think definitely working with people with disabilities helped that initial fear, but it also helped with the fact that I saw Tyler as a person. Tyler as an individual, Tyler as a man, someone who had a lot to offer.
People always tell me, you know, it's so great that you were able to see beyond Manny's scars and see who he really was and to look past those scars. And that always takes me back. You know, I'm always like, I don't look past the scars. The scars are part of who he is.
The first time I made love after my injury was an incredible moment. For me, so many emotions and feelings overcame me. It's hard to put into words, you know? I mean, how do you describe that? For me, it was like, you know what? This overwhelming feeling of acceptance that here's someone who loves me for who I am, not who, is judging me by my appearance in any way.
The first time we're intimate was in the hospital I want to say about 3 or 4 days, maybe, before I went outpatient. Pretty much, it was a wink, wink, nod, nod, nurse, like, leave us alone. And during the busy morning in a hospital, and it was interesting. It was definitely fun.
I was just excited to give our relationship that opportunity. He was still pretty heavily bandaged. His legs were still healing, so definitely I was very concerned about hurting him. I tried to go slowly and be very gentle because more than anything, I didn't want this to be a negative experience for him. So I was excited to have intimacy with him, but I was also really excited to give him that, to reassure him that I was still sexually attracted to him and I was still very interested in maintaining our marriage in all aspects.
The biggest barrier was the medications, what would work, what wouldn't, because there's a number of different options out there, and it's just a trial and error. You try this, oh, it doesn't work. Oh, you try this, oh, it doesn't work. Oh, you try this, oh, it works okay, but it's just, you gotta see what works for you, and everyone's different. And for me, I have to do injections.
The spinal injury had taken a big chunk of the physical relationship out, because
we only had time to show you this brief 10 minutes out of a 60-minute documentary I put together. As mentioned in the film, people who return from deployment with a serious physical or mental disability bear a disproportionate burden of marital stress and divorce than their non-disabled counterparts. So I first started working with the veterans in 2006 when I was at Morehouse School of Medicine in the Center of Excellence for Sexual Health. And at the time, the headlines were failed intimate relationships are the leading cause of suicide. And we all know, I think, on this call, that suicides are complex issues with many contributing factors, but relationships really continue to be the leading contributor for psychological stress. And so I always show, in addition to failed intimate relationships, relationship problems contribute to intimate partner violence and child abuse and reduced quality of life, homelessness, and substance abuse. So this is a really important issue. And, I always like to include this slide because we could say that relationship problems are like the leading contributor, for suicide and psychological stress. This is from the Department of Defense suicide event reports. Now, this chart is from 2016, but 3 years later, 2019, the numbers look exactly the same. So I'm leaving this one in because it has more of the factors. The latest chart only has a few of the factors, but you see relationship issues here always, around or above 40%. The next psychological contributor is admin or legal. So that's somebody who's has administration or legal problems already in the military. Work is like a close third, but you see general family issues, financial issues are lower here. Right here, these are a family or friend member who committed suicide. So this is, a really important topic that really just hasn't gotten enough focus on. So in 2008, we ran a national conference in DC called Wounded Troops and Partners, Supporting Intimate Relationships, to get this on the national radar. And we were successful. Secondary to or subsequent to that, I worked with the chaplains and social workers at Charlie Norwood in Augusta to develop some relationship retreats. And that went on to be a program called Warriors to Soulmates in the VA. But the overall goals for making the film were to open up discussions, or the goals of the film in general are to open up discussions about healthy sexuality for those that are serving or have served, to increase the understanding regarding sexual difficulty or dysfunction that might occur after an injury or exposure to violence, to enhance the ability to have a positive sexual experience and encounter, to decrease self-judgment and shame regarding sexual difficulty or dysfunction, and to bring awareness to the ways that unhealthy relationships can undermine relationships and unhealthy relationships can undermine sexual relationships. And then there were specific goals for the injured and wounded veterans and their intimate partners. And that's to provide realistic hope for injured veterans based on success stories of role models, because I really believe in post-traumatic growth. Provide insights to help those who are struggling with intimate relationships. They could learn a lot from watching this whole film and see how other couples cope. Encourage married and committed couples to seek counseling before dissolution of relationships. Inspire wounded singles to acquire the skills and dispositions they need to date and create healthy relationships, because healthy relationships are protective against suicide. They also help diminish some of the effects of depression and anxiety. And motivate injured veterans to seek help instead of committing suicide over failed intimate relationships. So the whole film, these are the different segments it's broken into. It has meeting the veterans, military backgrounds, injuries and their impact, relationship backgrounds, sexuality needs and challenges, and caregiver issues, parenting, and summaries. There's a workbook that goes along with this. So it's, for anyone that's comfortable facilitating a group, it's got very specific directions, and it's got questions based on those different categories I just described. And it's got separate questions for, or they're color highlighted questions if you're doing a group for injured veterans or their partners, or whether you're doing a group for medical professionals or just a general group. So the questions are, there's 3 different sets of questions. And I've got another guide for individuals. Once the video is available for individual distribution, I have a guide that could go along with that a couple could use on their own. I just haven't had it graphically formatted it yet. And lastly, if anyone interested in watching or using the film, it's available for educational licensing, library access through Canopy, if your library has Canopy, or your hospital or organization, or you could host a screening. So if you scan this code, and I could put the URL in there too, it'll take you to a link tree and show you how to access each one of those. So I'm going to stop my screen sharing now. I should be back. Yes.
We do have a question though, if this is a good time to jump in with a question.
Sure. I didn't know the protocol, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Sure. So the question is the Warrior to Soulmates still a program of the VA?
Yes. It's a difficult program to find. It's pretty amazing. I worked with the Peers Foundation back in 2007, 2008 to develop this program. And then when it was picked up by the chaplain in California and institutionalized, they trained literally hundreds of chaplains and social workers. But it's very hard to find. You have to know it exists. You go to your local VA and you go to the chaplain's office or call or whatever contact and ask them if they or another hospital is hosting an event. Usually they're hosted a couple times a year on either coast.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any other questions at this moment, but if anybody else has a question, please put it in the chat and we will try and get those addressed.
All right, so Jeanette, we'll go ahead and move to the next. If you think of a question for Dr. Tepper, if you could just put it into the chat box, and we can always circle back around.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. All right, so our next speakers are Jen and Tom Satterly. Again, they are from All Secure Foundation. Welcome to our meeting today.
Thank you, and we really want to thank you for having us on as well. I'm Tom Satterly. This is my wife, Jen. We're co-founders and co-CEOs of the All Care Foundation. I'd like to kind of set the story and just kind of chat about what we found through my life and what we found through working with other special operations organizations. I spent 25 years in the Army, 20 in a Tier 1 organization. And what that did to my body, what that did to my mind, and everything attached to living a normal life was destroyed. I lost empathy, I lost compassion, and I lost the will to live along the way as well. It was one of those drinking, pills, reckless lifestyle, just moving on. Divorces, I was, 3 divorces ahead of Jen, and it wasn't even occurring to me that was a problem. People ask, what are the signs and symptoms of post-traumatic stress? And I tell them, well, just look at an operator and you'll see it. It's all in their behaviors. It's in the aggression, the lack of sleep, the heavy drinking, the depression along the way, and just the aggressiveness towards those that don't understand. And they don't seem to get it. They don't seem to care because they want people to care about them. They feel like they've been left behind and that society doesn't accept them. So along with that, along with all the other problems that the doctor talked about before this, add all this along with it. As I was tanking, I had multiple suicide attempts. And during one of them, I was working with Jen. It was post-service. And I had moved to Amman, Jordan for a year and a half and worked there. And then when that dried up, I laid in bed all night long watching TV, and I slept as long as I could in the day. It was just pure depression that I didn't even recognize. There was no help for post-traumatic stress. I didn't know what it was, and the VA told me I didn't have it at the time. So I didn't know what was wrong with me. I met Jen working, doing realistic military training exercises where she got to work with Navy SEALs, Green Berets, and the Rangers and learned a lot about what goes on during deployments, what goes on during training and exercises. And they started to come to her with her problems. And all of their problems that they came to her with were all of my problems. They were the same exact problems that manifested in different ways, but the stories that we heard over and over and over again were so similar that we had to address it. Meanwhile, I'm still tanking, and Jen and I are just getting to know each other as work partners, and she started to notice these people that would come and chat with her, and then they would deploy, and then they would come back to the next training iteration, and she's like, where's Mike? Well, he didn't make it. Well, where's Jim? He didn't make it either. Oh, and then Bob got killed during the training exercise, which threw Jen off, and she finally realized that she started to get a peek into the world, that if you don't get that peek, you don't really understand it. And that's when she kind of looked at me and said, we need to start a foundation, which threw me off a bit because I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, I think you said, a few words along with you're crazy for that, because we didn't know what we were doing. Tom had spent, like he said, 20 years in Delta Force. My background was commercial advertising, film and photography. So I spent, like Tom said, about 3.5 years embedding with special operation teams as combat camera. Only on stateside missions though, but sometimes I would be with these teams for 3 to 4 weeks at a time. And like Tom said, I started seeing the same problems occur in these teams. But one point I want to make about that as well is it was the same thing or similar things, maybe not all the same things that I was seeing at home. But what I noticed was one SEAL would come up to me. For example, there was a team that had a heavy loss. They were working with us, so we were the last team to see them before they would deploy. So they were getting ready to deploy again. On the previous deployment, they had lost 2 teammates. So on this iteration, because I had started to know these guys pretty well, I started asking them individually in private, how are you doing? I heard things like, we don't grieve. Like literally, we don't grieve. We're not allowed to. It's not part of what is allowed in our culture or our mission, or there's time for it. Things like I'm isolating more, I'm having suicidal ideations. When I started asking them if they talked to other members on their team about this, they said, no, we don't do that. When I asked them if they brought these issues home, they said, no, we don't do that. So yes, there were patterns that were similar at home, because Tom was the same way when I met him. I said, my gosh, I've seen Black Hawk Down, which Tom was involved in. And I said, there's no way you don't have PTS. He said, no, the VA didn't give me that, nor TBI. In fact, he was only 10% disabled. I think right now you're 210, probably 2,000% disabled, but well over 100%. So we were seeing the disconnection in the teams, and then we were also seeing that same disconnection at home. And when I would start to talk to guys, they would quite honestly dump their deepest, darkest secrets, me pre-therapy, getting them to that help and getting them to a professional. But when they would talk to me, I would say, do you share these stories with your wife? Do you share them with your partner? And it's no, I can't bring the war home to her. I don't want to do that. And I think what's missing is the war is going to come home whether you're sharing a story or not. The behavior is going to come in the door whether you're sharing the behavior or not. So what ends up happening quite often is the spouses feel left out. They feel that the mistress that is the military is completely taken over their life. Often they feel like the caretaker, and that could come with resentment and a lot of other feelings. So when Tom and I started the organization in 2016, that was kind of our research time. We officially became a 501c3 in 2017. And our mission is to serve special operation families, not just a special operation warfighter, but the special operation family. And what that looks like for our organization right now are couples. We're working to try to include teens, but we're not there quite yet. So our organization currently supports special operations, any branch of service, really any job. We've had people who are intel, from door kickers to everyone who has come through our program. So it's open to anyone. It's also open to spouses who warfighter might not be ready to get help yet. So they're desperate. They're trying to figure out what's going on at home, and their warfighter saying, I'm good, I'm fine. A lot of organizations require the warfighter be part of the program. We do not. So the spouse or a Gold Star or a single member can still come through our program. I think one of the things that got brought up earlier is something that we talk about a lot too, which is the suicide and how it's affected in the home. So I believe the statistic, I'm probably going to mess it up now, but I was trying to write it down quickly with the charts and graphs about that the home life is what is the main indicator. We see that as well as the suicides are happening after a family incident. So we're really pushing the DoD that you've got to pay attention to family. You have to pay attention to these relationships. If you don't, you're missing the largest indicator.
If you don't pay attention to the family, you don't know why they're behaving poorly at work as well. It's not all the work overseas that they're doing. It's the lack of connection at home. I think you heard that in the video. I don't feel connected. I'm angry at myself. All of mine was self-driven as well. I acted out to other people. As we know, it's always about the individual that's attacking someone. And that was exactly the same with me. The reason we help the couples, we've heard a lot of stories, and even our first individual that we took on, we sent him to Warrior's Heart. He had a list of problems. Him and his wife had not been close for a while. And we found out why. He was on every known drug to man. And we didn't know working with him. We had no idea.
Prescription and non-prescription.
Prescription, non-prescription, alcohol, and we had no idea. And one day he called us. He said, I'm on the range and I can't hold my pistol anymore. I need help. So we got him that help. He went down and got a lot of help for it. And he cleaned up and he's doing a wonderful job now. He ended up getting a divorce as well. When you don't help the spouse, the warrior comes home. He's like, I'm all better. Let's get going. And the spouse is like, great. The last 20 years I've been kicked and beaten and thrown around. And now you're better and nobody cares about me. So that veteran typically ends up going back to drinking or tanking because the person at home doesn't become part of that family of help. So we found that if we help the spouse at home, that adds more to the strength and the base of a better recovery and a recovery that lasts longer.
And quite honestly, the spouses deserve it. They've earned it. The amount of sacrifice and the service that they provide, quite honestly, when people ask why we serve the spouses, it's because they deserve it. It's because they've also been injured. It's because many of them have secondary post-traumatic stress because of the effects of war in the home. So we owe it to our families. This country owes it to these families to help repair. So that's why we're so passionate about it as well, is they've earned it.
One thing we've learned is that people tell us over and over again on every platform that it's not what we're saying, but it's how we say it. We make it more understandable. Like we removed the D from post-traumatic stress disorder. We called it injury, then we just say it's post-traumatic stress. We got yelled at by doctors. It's absolutely post-traumatic stress disorder. You have to say that. And I said, Doc, if I can't get them to your office, you can't help them. So I'm going to call it whatever I want. You call it whatever you want when you get to the office. So the words matter. If you want to know what's going on with the warrior, he's not going to tell you. The ones we work with are highly trained. They're deceptive. They hide it with inside. They want to act like they'll never, ever crack. Any warrior out there, no matter where they work, doesn't want you to think they'll crack. So they're going to hide everything from you. Doctors, psychologists, everyone, coaches, they're going to hide it from you if you get the spouse involved. You get couples therapy going, you get individual and couples, bring them together. There's really not much you can hide, and it really works out those problems a lot better. It opens up everything for the family, and the tools that we use is becoming generational. We're changing the behavior of the parents, which will change and improve the behavior of the children. We know it's happening in large numbers.
Those are even some of our favorite letters that we've gotten over the years. We have a picture on our refrigerator from a 5-year-old and 9-year-old that says, "Thank you for helping my mom and dad." And we have a letter from a 15-year-old boy who said that in the last 2 years, he has a completely new father now. So like Tom said, the generational change is happening. It needs to happen. I know for me personally, being a spouse, I was lucky enough to work in special operations. I was lucky enough to get to see underneath the curtain. So I had have a little bit of a better understanding than a lot of spouses do, who are completely left in the dark, who know nothing what's going on. Their husbands or wives don't want to tell them what's going on in service. So there's a level of resentment. I will tell you, when Tom and I started couples therapy and we were working on our marriage, he was also working on his PTS. And I got to witness as a spouse him work through some of those really difficult memories and really difficult traumas as his spouse, sitting in the room with him and the therapist. It was so incredibly powerful, even though those moments didn't have anything to do with our marriage. It had to do with my partner, my husband, the person I love most in this world. And I got to see what war did to him in a way that he wasn't even comfortable talking at home. So sometimes that third party allows the couples to not only talk about the issues that they're having together as a couple, but individually. He got to hear stories of my rape. He got to hear stories of the childhood abuse that created more compassion and empathy and for him about me and me about him with war. So we bridged a lot of gaps through therapy. And I think one of the other important things I'd like to talk about before we open it for questions is anonymous is also so incredibly important, and why people feel very comfortable coming to All Secure is because we're life coaches. We don't keep records, and that's really important to this community who have been betrayed so often and feel very skeptical, I guess that's a good word, to raise their hand to ask for help. We don't call it help. We call it training or retraining because, again, war fighters don't really like to use that word help. So we could discuss that more in the breakout, but
what we like to bring to the warriors is the internal thought process of you need to be self-aware. Most of them say I don't have a problem, but if they stop, get into themselves, they'll realize I have an issue. So they need to become self-aware. Then they have to have the admittance, right? You have to accept that there's an issue that you need to work on, right? We don't call it help, we call it training, right? They haven't been trained on this before, so we train them in this. If they've been trained in this before and they have an issue, so we retrain them. No warrior wants to hear they need help. So we removed that word as well. Just like we took the D out of post-traumatic stress. We changed the invisible wounds of war. We used to rock that moniker all the time. Invisible wounds of war, until I had a doctor from LA call me on the phone who didn't know who I was. And he had my brain scan, and he literally described who I was, how I behaved, and then asked me questions after that. And I literally started crying because I finally understood it was not an invisible wound. It was a wound that you can see. And we all know that people at work, if you break a leg, they're going to let you sit down for 6 to 8 weeks and heal. But if you say, I'm an alcoholic, I need to go get some help, you're probably going to get moved out of that position or fired. So we really need to be careful about what we do. And the fact that words matter and how we're changing generations as we have the people, and this is how important simple words matter. We have all of our people write a letter to each other. They pick one word and they write a letter describing what that word means to their partner. We had one lady, well, we had many, but one lady, the most memorable, was after a retreat. She emailed us and wrote us back, that letter that you made us do was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard from my husband. I had no idea after 20 years that he felt that way about me.
30 years.
30 years. I let my children read it. They started crying. I had no idea that's how he felt. We framed it and hung it on the wall, and we all started crying. They just need to be told to say these words to each other, and they need to give them a piece of paper with different words on it to look at and say that and the permission to do that. That's all we give them. Once they have the admittance and the acceptance of it, they can get to work, and then we give them the information to do that.
They might not even know they're having marital troubles. A lot of people come to us, and because military relationships look quite complicated, and if you're in the circle, or maybe you're active duty and you're surrounded by a bunch of other people who are having really complicated relationships too, they might come to you and they don't even realize that they're having severe marital issues. They think this might be the normal for our community, or this is the normal, what we're supposed to accept. So some people coming forward might need you to help them assess where their marriage is at and help them understand that it can be better. It can be great. It's going to take work. You've got to get through the peaks and valleys. But I think that that's an important distinction as well.
Coming from the military, they all have the tools. They have the planning tools. They have the ability. They have physical fitness. They know what to do, or they know how to do it. They just need to know what to do. So that's what we do. We give them the resources of what to do. We can't save their lives. We let them know that. They're the only ones that can save their lives and improve their marriage, but we give them the tools to work on that.
Absolutely.
Do you want to take some questions? I'd like
Love
to take any questions that anybody has before our breakout sessions.
One of the questions it looks like we have is, what programs are they offering now? I think that's your program. So what does your program look like?
We have several different programs. Our main program is the life coaching. So this is available to any special operator, warfighter, active duty, or veteran. It's also open to Gold Stars, single warfighters, and then also couples. So when they come into our program as couples, those sessions that we allow for, All Secure Foundation covers 12 of those sessions entirely. That can be split up between the couple in whatever way the coach is going to work with them. All of our coaches, by the way, are licensed clinical social workers.
We also run larger retreats throughout the year. The last one I had was 150. The next one planned is 200. What that is basically a 2-day event where they get to camp out overnight. We provide everything for them. There's no alcohol there unless they bring it themselves. We don't provide it. We provide the food and we provide the entertainment. We bring in field experts to talk about sleep, psychedelics, marriage counseling. Everything that we found that
whatever special operations is missing, we try to find
whatever
the
they've needed
answers.
help in, we provide that, and stellate ganglion block, meditation. So anything that they have an issue with, we lay it out in 2 days during entertainment and fun. They get to connect and do yoga together, and then they sign up. They sign up for their help. They sign up for the stellate shot. They sign up for coaching and counseling. So it's really our recruitment tool to get them in. But our main is 365 days a year, we do coaching with our licensed clinical social workers.
All right, thank you. Roy wants to know, where are the camps held currently, and are there opportunities to partner and bring to our community in West Texas? They're in Midland. They have a large population of SOF veterans.
You sure do. We love Texas.
We do. We love Texas. We used to do our retreats at Big Cedar 4 to 6 times a year with 10 to 12 couples. That got expensive, and the need was so great, our retreats filled up day one. We released a data retreat, it's full, and everybody was calling and asking, can I get in? So we'd have a long standby list. So we went to the larger format. It's not as intimate, but we found out that when people really get the most help is during the coaching, the sessions with the coaches. So the events are great. They get to open up to each other, but really they continue on with the coaching. So we decided that the bigger event to bring more people in would get more people into coaching, which is where our real work is done.
The next one is the last weekend in April. It is a secret event, so we don't release where it is. This is to protect our special operators who are still active. So anyone who signs up for a retreat, they get the information on where it's at. I'll just say it's near
general location.
It's near Nashville. So that's the last weekend in April. It's not quite full yet. We have some spots open for soft warriors, warrior couples. Our presenters are full for this one. But if you'd like to still find out more information about it, if you go to allsecurefoundation.org, just our website, and hit the connect, that'll go to Lauren Manley, and she can gather information. The next one after this, we're building out, not quite one in Texas yet, but we are going to West Coast, probably up by First Group. And then we'll move into the mountain region and then back towards Fort Liberty in October. That's probably the weekend of the 13th.
And we do travel. We do go to other places.
Yep.
We don't do it individuals, but if we're going to the 48th RQS, Hawaii's SOCPAC's bringing us in. So we've gone down to Tampa. So we do SWIC. So we go to organizations and speak as well. Like we go to SWIC, we talk to the new recruits, the X-ray people. We talk to them halfway through, and then we talk to them after they graduate, right before they head on out the door to their teams. So hopefully they've heard it on their way up. They'll share it with their teams. So if something happens on the teams, they've heard it before, it makes sense. So yeah, maybe I'll reach out. So we try to plant that seed.
Do you cover, so I'm assuming that the program itself is at no cost to the veteran. What about travel? Do you cover any travel expenses to the event, or travel expenses home?
Generally,
We used to.
Yeah,
Now that
generally
we
we
do
don't do
200
it.
now.
Yeah, generally we don't do it anymore. We used to cover everything, but now with 200 people, we don't have the funds to cover all their travel. So they provide their travel. Some people have hit us up individually. We'll help them get there.
We
But yeah,
usually refer to other organizations. There's a lot of other organizations that we're starting to partner with that actually will help cover travel, airfare. So I know some folks, especially we had a bunch of people come from Hawaii to the East Coast one that we just did in October, and they had all of their travel covered by another benevolent organization.
So yes, we partner because we do a small bandwidth of items. So we partner with Warriors Heart. We partnered with other organizations that do the things we don't do that we've vetted. So yes, we vet other organizations, partner with them to make sure we warmly hand off whoever needs something that we can't do. We don't just tell them to go look for somebody. We hand them off.
Well, I'm not seeing any other questions, and we're about out of time. So why don't we go ahead and wrap this part of the meeting up, and we can move into our breakout sessions. So thank you, Dr. Tepper and Jen and Tom, for a great presentation. I'm going to hand the presentation back over to Allison to talk about the breakout activities and get us going.
Thank you, Jeanette. All right, so our breakouts today will be breakout 1, which is showing empathy and vulnerability. That's being led by Dr. Mitchell Tepper. Our topic 2 is language that supports healing. That's by Jen and Tom from All Secure Foundation. Our topic 3 is going to be led today by Lynn Morella from Eagle Rock. It's an organization that also offers therapeutic retreats for families. So please find one that you would like. When I open the rooms, you'll have 25 minutes to talk. Don't spend a lot of time introducing yourself because we won't have as much time talking. Just your name, where you work. If you haven't changed your organization, your name yet, do who you are and where you work. And then the room lead will begin a discussion. And when we come back together, we'll have opportunity to share some of our thoughts from our breakouts. Okay, so if you are all ready, I'll open the rooms now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Hope you got a lot of good conversation going on in your rooms. So let's see. I think we got everybody back now. Group number 1, showing empathy and vulnerability. Dr. Tepper, that was your group. I think. Did you pick you have a person that's going to share some key thoughts for us?
No, we didn't. Do we have somebody who wants to step up?
Yeah, I took notes for this.
Oh, great.
So essentially, we talked about the fact that it was taboo, even though it's been around for a very long time. It's still taboo. There are a lot of investors who are willing to obviously give money, but necessarily don't want to have their name to it. So obviously, we still have some more work to do with that. In discussing, love and sex after war. But basically, we discussed, listening. Guiding the conversation, but letting the warrior talk, and kind of have them feel what they feel comfortable with, and discussing and asking open-ended questions, and realizing that we're not going to solve their problems, but that they know that they have a person in their arena that they can basically connect with.
And then we talked a little bit about the peers program, which is used for the Warriors to Soulmate program, and how they teach the skills just as if, like Tom and Jen were talking about. So, as I introduced them to this exercise called emptying the emotional jug, and how people have a chance to say what they're mad about, what else they're mad about, what they're sad about, what they're scared about, and what they're glad about. And through this practicing facing each other, they level off, they knee to knee, hand to hand. They get used to expressing emotions like they're not used to. And the more they can get out what they're mad about and what they're sad about, what they're worried about, that relieves some of those negative emotions. And then some of the positive emotions are easier to come to the surface. That's just one exercise over a weekend. That's very powerful. So you could actually teach vulnerability and you could teach empathy. So, people are saying, oh, we start the conversation, but we leave it to the mental health professional. But I explained that I'm not a mental health professional, and my PhD is in education, and that the peers program is meant that anyone could be a coach. anyone could lead it, once they go through it, and because there's skills you could teach, and that we don't solve the problems. So it's actually more difficult for someone who does counseling to lead the program, because you got to really step back and not give advice, with the idea that the couple will come up with the solution that works for them if you give them the right tools.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Tepper, I think your video would be a very good tool for organizations to actually use to get some good conversations started. And those guides look amazing. So hopefully somebody will take that idea and maybe do one of your showings of your show and use the guide with their veterans in their community.
I was telling them in the group, if you go from that link tree to New Day Films and you scroll down and you hit educational resources, if you want to look at the PDF and all the questions, you can just download that and take a look.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Tepper. Let's move on to topic 2, language that supports healing. That was Tom and Jen. Tom and Jen, did y'all have a note taker, or do you just want to tell us some stuff that you guys talked about that were key points?
Do we have any volunteers before I call somebody out? All right, Stacy, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, the teacher, that's why I have to be, speak up here. Well, we talked that love supports healing. And one of the big things that they talked about was PTSI, post-traumatic stress injury versus disorder. And I thought that was really neat because, an injury, I don't know if we said this in the main room, or, football injury, well, you'll get healed or you'll get yourself to a doctor or hospital or whatever. And I think somebody in our group said, they should have taught us that at basic training, that we can be healed of this. And I think it's just so true, and then, Tom, you guys can help me here too.
Yeah. No, I think it was a good chat about just how language can either support healing and sometimes how it can be really disruptive towards healing, and how people sometimes can't even approach healing or help because they just frankly don't like the words that are associated with how it makes them feel. That asking for help is a sign of weakness. It's been beat into them for a very, very long time. So trying to change that, like Tom always says, the military is a massive, massive ship in the ocean, and we're trying to turn that ship. It's just going to take some time, but language that can support that turn is really important.
We talked about military leadership and their language that matters and supports healing when they say, hey, POTA funds and people before equipment, right? But yet they don't spend any money on people. They spend it all on equipment. I talked about the last 20 years being 5,074 combat-related deaths in 20 years. And in the same amount of time, we've had 40 to 65,000 that we know of suicides. So we're spending our money for combat, but we're killing ourselves at home. So we need to spend the money at home. And that's a language to me that says I care. When I put my money where my mouth is, and I don't just make a quote of people before equipment. We actually do what we say.
Yep.
Very good point. Thank you, guys. Sounds like y'all had a great conversation. So
it was the best.
3, yeah, best group ever. Topic 3, organizational strategies that strengthen marriages. And that was Lynn from Eagle Rock Camp. Go ahead.
There it goes. My button wouldn't work. I'm going to copy John and Tim. Tom and Jen, and ask if we had any volunteers that want to speak first. Okay, we had a relatively quiet group, small group, and quiet. We talked about, really it was Missy Hyatt and myself introducing our organizations because we do marriage and family retreats. And some of the things that we see, types of curriculum, and everybody else indicated needed to know how to contact us and things like that. So it was good for sharing resources and all. You're not going to find what we do in your local community. You're just, we're national resources. I don't know about Missy, but our team has served families from 37 states, and I think we've got 2 more states coming in this year. So we're national in scope, and we also are starting to serve the Special Operations Forces community, active duty. I'm safe to say it here specifically for the National Guard. So we don't talk about those. You won't find those on our website. We're just working those quietly on the side because we need to protect those men and women. we protect them all anyway. We're very, very guarded about that. But anyway, we're not talking about the active duty, just within that community. So, and you guys, if you know special operations forces that are either active or not, we're active or veterans, we're open to both groups. That was pretty much it, though, really just looking for where can you find resources. For us, I talked briefly about our how we help them find, we're faith-based organizations, so we will help them find faith-based counselors in their home communities that will uphold their faith.
Awesome. So, well, make sure, Lynn, if you don't mind, put the information down in the chat box. I'll stay open a little bit longer. And also, we lost Project Sanctuary, but yeah, I'll try to include that on there too. I think she's dropped off. But anyway, I am going to close it up. Jeanette, I'll pass it back to you.
All right. All right, thank you. So we'd like to thank all of you for collaborating and sharing. At America's Warrior Partnership, we partner with communities to improve veterans' quality of life and thereby reduce veterans' death by suicide or self-harm. We believe communities are best equipped to improve the quality of life for all veterans, and our goal at America's Warrior Partnership, and our goal today, is to provide community partners like yourselves with support, information, and best practices to help you deliver quality services to veterans in your community. Our next Battle Rhythm will be on March 4th. On that day, we will be focusing on changing the narrative from broken to thriving. We hope you can attend. Thank you for being here today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you all.